Welcome to Critique of the Peer Review Science Channel. Donate to our channel on PayPal, pernaturallinguistics@gmail.com. Welcome to Critique of the Peer Review Science Channel. This is Nutch and Nab. Today we're going to be discussing Ivan Sertima's research. So we have I did a lot of peer reviews. Well, I evaluated a lot of peer reviews, and the methods to my research, of course, is utilizing the historical methodology. That's the approach I use into gathering the research. So someone came to me and asked me to do research on Ivan Sertima. They asked me whether he is seen as a pseudoscientist amongst science, or the science consider Ivan Sertima's work as pseudoscience. And the research I came about is that absolutely not. Ivan Sertima's work is not considered pseudoscientific. And the reason I say this because I utilize my historical methodological approach, which can be seen here. So what I have done is just go to what I am trained in, and then I evaluated what we call secondary sources. Then I also observed primary sources. So I even looked into the statements and the research of Ivan Sertima. I also looked into, in this given situation, we only can rely on what his research said, and we only can rely on secondary sources in this type of situation. So by using chronology, in which, to get all of that aspect as of yet, I look into journal articles and journal papers, which is peer reviewed. That's the name of our channel. So our channel deals with peer review data. According to peer review data, and historical methodology approaches, and me using peer review secondary sources, I must conclude that Ivan Sertima's work is still used. Numerous researchers have reviewed his work. Numerous researchers have stated that Ivan Sertima's work were in fact pseudoscience. So a certain group of anthropology, archaeological experts, some view his work as pseudoscience, according to peer review data. And according to peer review data, some view his work as magnificent. Now, whether his work is scientific or considered pseudoscientific doesn't matter. What matters to me is the portrayal in media or mainstream media sources. They are subjective in their approach, which they only say what's the scholars that do not agree with Ivan Sertima, but they do not look at the peer review data that agrees They don't look at the archaeological experts and archaeologists that agree with his work. So I find that intriguing that in one aspect, people are saying his work is pseudoscientific, yet in the other aspect, there are other peer reviews that say his work is not pseudoscientific. But it's isolated in a sense, whereas they only hone in on the scholars that don't agree, but they do not mention at all in mainstream media the other peer-reviewed journals that agrees. So to be fair and neutral, and I'm being objective as possible, as a neutral historian, as a neutral academic, someone who don't side with neither, I only evaluate the data unbiasedly. And what I see, that you have some that disagree and you have some that agree. And in the peer review data, you have, even to this date, scholars are using his work in research. You have sociologists who are using his work, which they also, their methods of approach is also qualitative and quantitative methodologies. See, so sociologists have the capabilities of understanding historical events in Mexico, just like an anthropologist would, which mainly sociology basically more delves into qualitative aspects, where as a historian, we kind of delve more into primary they deal more in quantitative and we deal more with qualitative. So as a historian, I evaluated secondary peer review sources. And in these sources, I did a chronology all the way from 1978. You had scholars agreeing with Ivan Sertima, but it wasn't on no news outlets. It wasn't shared. Then we go further in chronology. Within 1995, you had researchers and peer review data that still agreed with Ivan Sertima and said his work was correct and he had facts, but this wasn't shared with mainstream media. All right. Then we can fast forward all the way to 2001, where you still had scholars that are legitimate to talk about these subject matters. Not just one, archaeologists are not the only academics that can talk about historical events and use qualitative and quantitative research methodologies to gather data from the past. Then you had other scholars from 2009, and then other scholars all the way up to 2021. So these are actually timely peer-reviewed data. And also I evaluate all of his book reviews that was ever published. I mainly have every book review of Ivan Sertima. And some book reviews disagree with Ivan Sertima, and some agree with Ivan Sertima. So here's where I step in, is that mainly I always heard the disagreements of scholars and peer review data, but we mainly never heard the ones that agreed with him. It's like they don't mention the peer review data. And I say they as in the person who sent me this data, and people are saying things that traditional peer review sources doesn't agree with, or traditional peer review sources will completely diverge from completely. All right. So this is the method I use to gather my data. I use secondary peer review sources, which hits the name of this channel. All right. So as we look at this date important. As a historian, y'all know I have to go by dates, and this will be considered untimely, but this is important because it's like a chronology from beginning from this point all the way up. So this is the Black Scholar, and this is also peer-reviewed data. All right. So at Kadika, we are not biased that your data have to come from a certain perspective. Different journals have different perspectives. Thus, you have other peer-reviewed journals with various perspectives. So we have found data that peer-reviewed the book when it, like, near the time it came out or when it came out. And this is by a PhD, right, who has the capabilities and understanding and methodologies to make a correct inference on this data. All right. So Philip S. Duke. Wow. So this is a book review. So, of course, anybody who went to college, y'all know that book reviews, y'all are trained to write book reviews. I am trained to write book reviews in every format possible, which is, oh my goodness, right? So it says, they came before Columbus, the African presence in ancient America, by Ivan van Sertima. Okay. And it's reviewed by Philip S. Duke. So this PhD stated, this astounding revolutionary book concerns all the facts that are now known about the links between Africa and America in pre-Columbian times. Very impressive and well documented. Evidence is presented from many different scientific disciplines that Black Africans seriously influenced the cultures of all the Americas over 2,200 years before the time of Columbus. So every scholar did not share the sentiments that Ivan Sertima was a pseudoscientist, right? And I conclude with his conclusion. This work is a revolutionary, magnificent achievement of the greatest importance to Blacks in all the Americas. In Africa and everywhere else, every possible attention must be paid to this book. If you can't buy it, ask for it at the library. However, you can get a copy, read it, and show it around. You will be amazed and astonished and gratified. This book has been a long time coming. Now that it's here, there is every reason you should enjoy the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of reading it. So this scholar is wow. This scholar PhD likes his work and don't view him as a pseudoscientist. So some would say, okay, Najanab, yeah, you showing PhDs, but is it any archaeologists? Is it any anthropologists that agrees with Ivan Sertima? And let's continue. Yes, there is. And peer-reviewed data, which is, wow, it's magnificent, really. But this is 1978, which is untimely. And I always tell people that untimely peer-reviewed data is not good if it doesn't have current peer-reviewed data that backs it. So this actually have current peer-reviewed data that backs it, but not only backs it, it gets into some other things like racial imperialistic scholarship or ethnocentric scholarship, which is in cultural anthropology. Ethnocentrism is in all cultures, right? But it should be like away from actual scholarship. We should be neutral, okay? So here's peer-reviewed data, like when a book almost came out or near the time of its publication, where not all scholars disagree with Ivan Sertima. So that is not true. All right. So let's continue. So this is the current anthropology, and this is near timely. This is almost a timely peer-reviewed data. This is the University of Chicago Press Journals. This is also peer-reviewed, and this is by Martin Burnell. This is a peer-reviewed channel. Just for I only focus on peer-reviewed data, right? So these are not my, I'm just using the historical methodologies to gather and get the data. So I must get the data from secondary and see how other scholars are reviewing his work and what they are seeing and what they are explaining in its specific historical context here. All right. So it says, so we are skipping from 1977 to 78, and now we are entering 1998. And in 1998, we find more scholars. Now, this is current anthropology. In 1998, volume 39, we got Martin Burnell publishing in peer-reviewed data. This guy is serious. He's publishing in peer-reviewed data. Excellent. And I would like to hear his view, because during this time, as a historian, I want to hear the opposite view. I want to hear what others, scholars that they are not being expressed in mainstream media. I want to hear what others. So this is Martin Burnell, Department of Government, Cornell University. Wow. He published in the current anthropology during this time on robbing Native American cultures. I know y'all seen a peer review where there were some ethnocentric and Eurocentric views of Dr. Sertima, and they were saying that he was robbing Native American, and a lot of people will show that peer review, right? But here is this peer review where you're having a scholar debating that. So this is how scholarship works. This is how peer review data work. It's not a religion. We don't just look at one peer review data and take that as if it's the Quran, or take that as it's like a Bible verse or anything like that. Nothing is apodictic. This is facts may change as time goes. All right. And hence, this is why we say qualitative and quantitative research. There may be research that we can gather that changes the current standing. So things changes in history, right? Who we once say was pseudo, now is scientific, and who you once now say that was scientific now is considered pseudo. Things can change. Now, here, this scholar is critiquing what they're saying about Ivan Ovan Sertima's work. All right, so to read all of this will be, let's try to summarize here. Okay, so this scholar said, having read most of Van Sertima's work on the subject, and after a couple of conversations with him, I have formed a very different view of his motivation from that expressed in the forum. Wow, interesting. We never seen this in mainstream media, though. It says, I have never heard him assert, as Ann Cypress suggests, that the ancient people of the Americas could not have attained such a level without aid from elsewhere. His view was that African intervention was contingent on not necessarily to the development of American civilizations. To be presumptuously psychological, I am inclined to believe that the American component in his ancestry and his boyhood among Americans in inland Guyana may have inclined him to welcome ideas that link his two continents. Van Sertima's passion is not anti-American, but anti-European. The tone of his attack on what he sees as the lack of Viking influence on American cultures. Wow. So I see it's a misunderstanding about what they're saying about his work. With Ivan Van Sertima is suggesting, he's not suggesting that without intervention, they would not have developed South American civilizations. He is only saying that there is influence. And as a historian myself, I I mean, if his influence is influence, right? But he is only suggesting influence. He's not suggesting that these populations are indigenous or I don't know if people really understand Ivan Sertima's theses. But it says, although all hypotheses of non-European contact have been generally rejected by professionals, those between America and Asia have not been attacked with the violence used against Van Sertima. So it seems like Van Sertima has a fringe theory, in my understanding, and his fringe meaning out of the outside scope of the accepted norm. So he has a fringe theory, yet it seems like they are dismissing or isolating it. That's what it seems. It seems like he's being isolated rather than being debated, which is secularly two different conceptions. One, if you are isolated, then that's by only subjective ideas. Whereas if you are debated, then you're welcoming his work and you are actually debating him, not just strictly isolating him because it goes against traditional. So I see what's going on in this paper. Now it says one reason for this is clearly that the proponents of Asian connections with America have tended to have acceptable academic credentials. Wow. So this is subjective. They are battling subjective ideas. This is what this scholar is saying. I'm not saying it. Y'all see it yourself. Y'all read it here. This is what they're going through. So it says the genuine forum given in CA to Jeffrey's 1971 proposals would seem to bear out this view. Even so, Van Sertima's appeal to non-academic audiences should not be taken as grounds for dismissing his views without a hearing. His proposals are serious and deserve to be debated rather than denounced. Exactly. So they're denouncing his work rather than dealing with it academically. It seems, as a historian, they are only dismissing it because on the base of it goes against their standard norms. So what they're doing is, to this scholar, just not my personal view. And please kindly do not leave negative comments to me personally. We are reading it for our own eyes. So you're seeing a scholar in 1998 publishing secondary peer-reviewed data here in the current anthropology peer-reviewed journal that they are attacking Ivan Sertima's work based off of denouncing it rather than debating it objectively. And here's where we got to go deeper, because now as a historian, I have to again use what is my methodology of approach? How am I approaching evaluating this data? Now, can I find someone other than Martin Bernal? He also had controversial type of research. And even though this is a peer-reviewed channel, we're going to respect that his data here is just obviously peer-reviewed, obviously. And he is criticizing the peer-reviewed data that most people will say. Now, is it any scholar that can back him in a later time? Because if what Martin Bernal was saying is actually have merit, then there will be other scholars that backs him, that are doing the research. And guess what? Yes, we actually have sociologists who is more than capable, someone who has a master in sociology and also a PhD in education curriculums. And that person is way more valuable, as they're using sociological, which is similar to historical methodologies that I use into determining and looking at this data objectively, other than anthropology, etc. But also then, as we look at the peer-reviewed data, I found out that there were actually anthropologists who agreed, but it's not in mainstream media. So here we're about to look at another peer-reviewed data. All right, so I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna take a slight break. Come back in 1 minute. I'm back. So here we look into more peer review data. What year is this? This is 2001, and this is actually timely according to how historians view what's timely. Of course, timely data changes. For example, timely data would change in computer science much quicker than if timely data was in history or anthropology or archaeology. So depending on the field, it depends on what's permissible as what is timely. So that is actually a part of what your field is. My field is linguistics and history, and thus for 25 years is timely for us. And it says here 2001. So actually, this is what 2025 hitting into 2026. We have to say this is timely 2001. Right now, this scholar do excellent work. All right. Excellent. And he has the actual background in which he can make accurate and precise inferences. And this is the Journal of Caribbean History, volume 35. Excellent. Okay. So let's review this. So it says, since its publication in 1976, Ivan Sertima's book, They Came Before Columbus, has gone through 21 printings while receiving widespread, though not unanimous, condemnation from the American archaeological establishment. Right? So it received widespread, but not unanimous. As a historian, I deal with qualitative data. Not unanimous is important for me. Right? That means that all of it was not deemed his work as unscientific as those are purporting, or what that person said to me that some others are purporting. Okay, so they are reporting that all of anthropology disagrees with his work, which according to peer review data, that's not true. Right? So it's not unanimous. All right. But a majority or a widespread, I wouldn't say majority, I just said widespread because widespread here is not defined. So it says establishment, culminating in a hostile full-length form in current anthropology. Wow. And yet startling, the field of American archaeology has recently found itself in the midst of a major paradigm shift caused by archaeological evidence that obliterates the Clovis model as a legitimate demarcation of the first presence of human settlement in the New World. Wow. So this peer review data is saying the Clovis model has been obliterated. It says Kamugisha proposes to trace the response to They Came Before Columbus while discussing the issue of diffusionism in Van Sertima's work. So this is an important paper for me as a historian using historical methodologies, because I want to hear and see different perspectives as a neutral academic on both sides. I want to see his limits, his good parts, people who agree and people who disagree, for future scholars like myself to make in accurate inferences to continue his work. Right. So we must tackle his work scholastically rather than just dismissing it because one peer-reviewed data said this or untimely peer-reviewed data said that. That is not science, and this is not how we are operating on Kadika here. So I don't want to read the entire paper, but a lot of this paper is actually important. All right, so the scholar is also saying that sociology will be important. All right. I believe an explanation of the ritual that this book has aroused and the academic establishment's refusal to consider Van Sertima's claims seriously are best understood through a discussion of the sociology of knowledge, specifically with respect to his status as an outside to the field of inquiry, the issue of diffusionism in archaeology, and the current assault on the area of research termed Afrocentrism. I thus propose in this article to trace the response to They Came Before Columbus while discussing the issue of diffusionism in Van Sertima's book. So this scholar did excellent work in a peer-reviewed journal, and you can tell this guy is a sociologist. They are masters at this, and he's tracing past work that responded to Ivan Sertima, which was perfect for the knowledge that I needed here. All right. So when y'all go to this paper, y'all can just read that. And let's skip and go to the evidence for pre-Columbian contact by Africans. Because this is where today we are having people saying this is pseudo or etc. But as a historian, it's not to me. You have peer-reviewed data that substantiates that obviously there were actually pre-Columbian African contact. What describes an African probably needs to be explained. But as a historian who is trained in historical methodology, as a linguist who is trained in historical linguistic methodology, basic and advanced, that you would have, there is evidence of pre-Columbian contact by Africans. Now, if one is trying to say that and use Ivan Sertima's book as a way to say that Africans are indigenous, I would not agree with that, because that's not the thesis of Ivan Sertima. And this was brought to me by a law student who said clearly that, that wasn't Ivan Sertima's arguments. Ivan Sertima's arguments is that it was more of a diffusionist or cultural contact, all right? Aerial diffusion. I wouldn't even say aerial diffusion. Let's say cultural contact, right? So let's read. It says, it is important to note. Now, mind you, this is not me. My work. This is peer-reviewed data only. So I will delete any comments being disrespectful, trying to attack me personally. I agree with Ivan Sertima. It's just nonsensical to think that Africans didn't travel. I mean, that's silly, right? Now, what I'm saying here, this is peer-reviewed data, which is separate from my personal view. All right. So here it says evidence. Now, it is important to note that in the case of the Americas, the reconstruction of pre-Columbian history is complicated due to the virtual wholesale destruction of written records by the Spaniards. Wow. So the Spanish, sorry about that. So the Spanish destroyed records. This is what peer-reviewed data says. The Spanish destroyed records. Why would you do such a thing? All right, well, knowing history, sorry about that, y'all. Knowing history, conquerors do that type of things even in Nile Valley. They will erase, you will be erased. You know, if you get conquered by a certain group and you're not stout in protecting yourself, you may be erased from history. And this has been going down in many different and various cultures. But let's continue. It says, deemed as heretical since they were outside the conceptual framework of Christianity and Western civilization, bigots like the Bishop de Landa in the Yucatan ordered the destruction of Native American books with the words, burn them all. They are the works of the devil. Wow. Wow, man. Just a moment of silence for the death of all that knowledge. Now let's continue. This destruction of the written and to a lesser extent archaeological record, which took place on both sides of the Atlantic, means that the pre-Columbian American history cannot be easily reconstructed. And this is what I want to be honed in on. As a historian, I have to know clearly that a lot of this is reconstruction from both sides. European viewpoint or perspective and the African viewpoint is wholly reconstructed. I mean, the amount of evidence that's destroyed on purpose is, give me the chills, man. All that knowledge. Even if I was a conqueror, I wouldn't destroy knowledge. Maybe destroy you, but I'm not going to destroy your knowledge. Let's continue. Adopting a multidisciplinary approach that draws on a number of different fields of inquiry to reconstruct the whole is therefore critical. Realizing this dilemma, Van Sertima interprets evidence from the fields of botany. So he's using this scholar and peer-reviewed data saying that Van Sertima is using a multidisciplinary approach, which here, all right? This is the approach that Van Sertima is using according to this peer-reviewed data. All right? He's using botany, linguistics, my field, archaeology, oceanography, European travelogues, which is again my field. This is within the realm of my field. Artistic images, again my field, by Native Americans. Cartography, if I'm pronouncing that right. His investigation of the evidence yields a powerful deconstruction of the many myths that deny the possibility of the presence of Africans in pre-Columbian America. Now, this is what peer-reviewed data say his methods were. It was a multidisciplinary approach. It wasn't based off of one type of approach. So I would now understand, as I'm looking at as being neutral, I would understand that where people are coming from who disagree. Being that there's so many disciplines, I mean, it will be impossible to not have limitations of your work, right? And it is most definitely probably worth note-taking that even the ones who disagree may have points that should be taken heed to, right? Now it says Van Sertima points out that he is not the first to suggest. So he's giving a literature review here. He is reviewing past, as a historian should. He is reviewing past histories, right, of other people who have researched these possibilities. Now let's continue. Van Sertima points out that he is not the first to suggest the presence of Africans in the New World before Columbus, nor were scholars who made similar claims over the years. So this period that begin to name various names: Jose Mulgar, Leo Weiner, Alexander von Wuthenau, Harold Lawrence, Rafik Jazboy, Christopher Columbus was the first to suggest it, as did a dozen other European explorers of this time period. When the Native Americans of the then name Hispaniola told him that black-skinned people came from the South trading in gold-tipped spears. Gold-tipped spears. Yeah, I'm gonna put that down for I gotta put that down for a lyrical verse. You know, I'll be rapping as a hobby. Gold-tipped spears. That's hard. But let's continue. It says, black-skinned people came from the South trading in gold-tipped spears. Columbus sent one of the spear points back to Spain to be assayed. It was found to contain the exact ratio of alloys of spears then forged in Guyana. Wow, man. Vasco Nunez de Belbo, Lopez de Comera, Lebe Brasure de Boardwalk. Please forgive me. I speak Black English. You have to understand that. And Fray Gregoria Garcia all report that they saw blacks in the Americas. So as a historian, I will have to, for being neutral, I gotta read these catalogs or these reports. I gotta read these reports. And you know, that is definitely part of being a historian, is to read these reports. This scholar is definitely, this peer review data here is definitely gave me exactly what I needed as a neutral scholar. I want to see both sides, and I definitely want to see the evidence. And this is 2000, when this is timely peer review data. Now it says Alfonso de Quatrefages not only speaks of distinct black ethnic groups among the Native Americans in Florida, the Jamasi, Brazil, Charuas, and St. Vincent, but also had a map by a sea captain, Kerr Hatlett, which showed black settlements along the South American coast. Man, you have to love peer review data, man. I mean, you have researchers that are actually doing the work, and this is some good work. Now, I can read all of this, and I know this will be actually exciting. But let's continue about this, all right? Turning to oceanography, the supposedly impassable Atlantic Ocean is shown to be anything but that. 3 powerful currents draw one automatically to the Americas as long as one is about 100 miles off the African coast. The myth that Africans did not possess sophisticated watercraft, that is definitely pseudoscience. If people are saying that Africans did not have advanced ships, it's completely. I have peer review data that shows nothing but the opposite. Matter of fact, I may do another peer review on shipbuilding, ancient Nubian shipbuilding. Y'all should see these gigantic ships, which is amazing. Thousands of years ago, gigantic ships. All right. And then we had scholars who actually did testing on that, case studies, etc. So let's continue. It says the myth that Africans did not possess sophisticated watercraft is exploded by the evidence of huge boats weighing up to 70 tons training along the Niger. Nor can the possibility of craft from ancient time crossing the Atlantic be discounted. Correct. The adventurer Thor Heyerdahl decided to test the oceanic viability of a pre-Christian craft constructed out of papyrus and used by the ancient Egyptians. The Baduma people on Lake Chad helped him build it, and on the second attempt, it made its way to the New World without difficulties, arriving in Barbados. So they actually did, according to peer review data, they actually did tests of African ships made of papyrus. First of all, I'm not getting on a ship. If you say, Nechaneb, I have a ship, And we need to go to the Americas, man. People in danger. We need to go to the Americas. And you say, man, I say a ship. Let me see your ship. And it's made out of papyrus. I'm not going, man. I'm not going. I'm gonna just let you know. I mean, right now, I'm not going, man. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to no papyrus. I'm not going to no papyrus, man. It's not happening. All right. Now they did the test, and in this test, a papyrus ship make it. This is peer-reviewed data now. Now, this is what I'm saying of bias and subjective mainstream research. Why this is not talked about as much as others. Whether you agree or disagree with me, I accept that, but only quoting peer-reviewed data here. It says that a papyrus ship was able to travel now. It says botanical evidence. Now this scholar, I can tell this guy's like a sociologist, and he's just, he's getting into deep within the data. It says botanical evidence includes the presence of American cotton and maize in Africa before Columbus. Now, remember, this is important. And I have linguistic evidence as well. Well, mine is not published. It's original research that's not published. I'm not going to talk too much on it. But when I publish it, it may shock a lot of people. Actually, I am arguing borrowings. It seems like there are borrowings of South American borrowings, especially maize, corn, and things of that nature, and botanical type of basic vocabulary that are actually in African vocabulary. Yes. So, and this peer-reviewed data backs it. All right. So it says, botanical evidence includes the presence of American cotton and maize, which is corn, in Africa before Columbus, while linguistic studies reveal fascinating similarities for words, including gold, spears, and banana. I have way more. So this is on a level of linguistics where I can say that if we're saying borrowing, I can show you at least 6 to 7 sound correspondences within hundreds of basic vocabulary. It doesn't suggest to me a genetic relationship, but it definitely suggests some type of context. What explains those sound correspondences? All right. So my original research, of course, is not peer-reviewed. But what I'm saying is that this peer-reviewed data says the same exact thing. Botanical evidence includes the presence of cotton, maize, and then it says linguistic studies reveal fascinating similarities for words. And of course, similarities can be ambiguous. But having these type of similarities going past 5 sound correspondences have to illustrate some type of contact. So just to be fair here, I'm not suggesting these similarities. I will have to review these similarities in absolute detail. All right. Now it says the field of cartography reveals the Perry-Ross map, a map redrawn. Well, I am trained in maps as a historian. It says a map redrawn from pre-Christian maps from the ancient library at Alexandria. Wow. That a map. I also use a map of Alexandria from that period, which is 1 CE, as a historian, to show people that actually Kemet, right, was looked upon not only in the upper near the northern regions near the Mediterranean, but it was also, Kemet was also viewed, Nubia was considered Kemet completely, all the way to the sub-Saharan area. So an ancient map, those people in that particular time viewed Kemet not just to be in this period as we see the block off shape of Egypt, No, but Kemet was actually seen all the way to the middle of sub-Saharan Africa. And this is the Library of Congress, and we have the actual map. So as a historian, we are also trained in maps, scanning maps. And this says that it's another map, so it's a pre-Christian map from the ancient library of Alexandria. Now it says its meridian is in Egypt and shows not only the Cape Verde, Madeira, Azores, and Canary Islands accurately, but the Andes, not discovered by Europeans until 1527. This is peer-reviewed data, man. This stuff should be out there as well, not just one aspect of the errors, but also the components where scholars are publishing in peer-reviewed journals, man. It says the Atra River in Colombia and the Amazon. Moreover, the ancient Egyptians who drew this map showed the location of these areas with remarkable accuracy with respect to longitude. While encyclopedias in Europe 150 years later, Columbus declared that longitude not only had not been discovered, but also was undiscoverable. Wow, this is amazing, man. So college students, yes, y'all can use this because most college rubrics only require peer-reviewed data, and this is why my papers pass. My papers pass because even though it may go against the standard quo or etc., it's in a peer-reviewed journal. Right? It's in a peer-reviewed journal, especially if it's timely. It says the pictorial evidence of an African presence is the most startling, as it is seen not only in small figurines and terracotta images, but in a number of colossal heads, with features described by one of their excavators as amazingly negroid. These colossal heads, while not without controversy, are the most vivid evidence of the African presence in the Americas before Columbus. I mean, now this is a lot of evidence. Y'all should check this paper. I'm not going to read all of it, but this peer-reviewed data is amazing from this scholar. And not all scholars review Ivan Sertima's work as pseudoscience. They just don't. All right. Wikipedia, that little article is very subjective. I'm showing you peer-reviewed data now. What y'all going to do? Y'all have to do something about this peer-reviewed data. Okay. So they review the Clovis model and its critique. Man. So let's seriously read the conclusion. All right. Whether the winds of change in the American archaeological establishment will really result in a reconsideration of Van Sertima's work remains to be seen. But it seems unlikely, given the reactive nature of many of his members to the evidence that pre-Columbian Africans made voyages to America. With the spurious but powerful argument from silence acting as a barrier, it seems unlikely that these ideas will remain even a basic level of academic respectability unless material of undisputed African origin is found in a controlled archaeological dig. As it stands, the treatment Ivan Van Sertima has received is one of the most powerful reminders of the powerful attachment to outmoded paradigms of many members of the ancient American archaeological establishment. The popularity of They Came Before Columbus among Afrikaner populations in the Caribbean and America, on the other hand, is directly linked to his powerful thesis that positions Africans in the New World before their arrival and the change of slavery. Ivan Van Sertima's thesis represents a mobilization of the ancient past to critique the contemporary miseducation of Afrikaner people, and its articulation of Africans as historical agents has tremendous value for popular understandings of the ancient history of the people of the Americas. This is excellent. So before I go, I would like to go into, because people say archaeologists and, don't agree with them. And, this was, someone said to me, But according to this research, that's not true in this peer reviewed data, right? So let's read this. Let's read distortions of because people distort his work, and this peer reviewed data was so beautiful in explaining that now. Sorry about that. This is so easily to be manipulated. Hold on. All right, conclusion, influence. Okay. Distortions. I think I should stay here. This is the most important. Sorry, I read the conclusion, but a lot of people will say, okay, archaeologists and anthropologists did. I just read a peer review from a current anthropology journal, peer review journal, where someone was defending Ibn Sertima. So that's false. Now here again, now this was a paper, Robbing Native American Cultures. If you look up easily, that paper is in 1997, I think, and it's a paper. I showed you a peer review of someone debating that paper. So there are peer reviews that came later that actually debated the paper called Robbing Native American Cultures. So that is not without controversy, which now it depends on the perspective of the researcher. Now let's continue. Isolating Van Sertima's work is the first strategy that Hapslip Vera used against him at the current anthropology forum. Wow, they isolated his work. And that happens even in YouTube communities where someone will ignore you because you pose a threat and they just ignore you. All right. So that is a European style strategy that has been actually done to Black scholars, as this peer review data is suggesting. Now, watch this. Now it says, and it contained their first deliberate misrepresentation of his work. And their claim that they came before Columbus was universally ignored and rejected by the anthropological establishment, apart from Glenn Daniels' review. Daniels' review, in fact, resulted in a flurry of letters to the New York Times, including one from Dr. Clarence Wynn, an archaeologist on the site. Wow, so an archaeologist on the site. It says a flurry of letters to the New York Times. So they were sending letters to a newspaper. Now, someone who sent the letter to the newspaper was a man named Dr. Clarence Wynn. This is interesting, man. This would be a movie about this. And also, I'm being trained in theoretical arts, where we're learning. I'm going to be trained in cinema and all of that as well. You know, I think that's important as well, to be learning to get correct narratives of history. So that should be a movie of Ibn Sertima. And in this movie, we should discuss both views. We should discuss the racist view of them isolating his work or trying to marginalize them. And then we should see scholars that's coming behind after, which we are seeing now, peer-reviewed scholars are defending it. So it's like a scale balance, which I suggest new scholars to either disprove it or prove it, which I'm already on board with. Africans had the possibility of traveling. It's just nonsensical to think they haven't, when peer-reviewed data clearly said there have been tests. I even know of one peer-reviewed test myself and other tests that have been done. But it says, including one from Dr. Clarence Wynn, an archaeologist on site when the controversial Olmec stone heads with African features were excavated. So this was archaeologists. When people say that all archaeologists disagree or etc., I know y'all hear that, but this archaeologist said, he quotes him, and this is the archaeologist said. Let's make this bigger. Wow, this is interesting. Yeah, it should be a movie about him, about what happened. I think what happened to him is more intriguing, as you'll have African scholars coming out later saying how important this work was. And the next work is going to shock a lot of you. And you even have European scholars who are publishing in peer-reviewed data, which I'm going to show you after this in 2021, man. I mean, like, this should be a movie. All right. Sorry about that. It moves so quickly. Where was I at? I lost the page. Oh, man. Sorry about that, y'all. Gotta find this page. I just had it, but it. Okay, here you go. So it says right here. Dr. Weant writes. Now, this is a archaeologist from the site where they actually excavated the Olmec stone heads. You know. Now it says Van Sertima's work is a summary of 6 or 7 years of meticulous research based upon archaeology, Egyptology, African history, oceanography, geology, astronomy, botany, rare Arabic and Chinese manuscripts, the letters and journals of early American explorers, and the observation of physical anthropologists. As one who has been immersed in Mexican archaeology for some 40 years and who participated in the excavation of the first of the giant heads, I must confess I am thoroughly convinced of the soundness of Van Sertima's conclusions. So this is an archaeologist who's been working in the Mexican archaeology for 40 years. Now, again, people who come here, if you dare attack me, man, this is not my data. I will, block you, delete you. But this is dealing with peer-reviewed data. The peer-reviewed data here states, in quotes, Dr. Weant writings in words. And it's peer-reviewed data, right? And it's timely. And not only that, this is an archaeologist who actually worked on the field of the excavation site. It has 40 years dealing in Mexican archaeology and participated in the excavation of the first of the giant heads. He was there. Then it says, I must confess. He said he must confess. He knew exactly the amount of work was done. He knew that this took him 6 to 7 years of meticulous research, which I always tell people, research is not too. How are you self-publishing millions of books? Every holiday you got a new book. How many books? With AI, anybody can write. If we gonna have a book contest, I will win, man. I will have a book. I will buy a little book publisher, a book printing machine, AI, and I'll just be publishing all type of books on every subject known to man, right? Even ants. I will publish books on ants. Now, when it comes to real scholarship, it takes years. I'm currently in a research paper that's 4.5, 5 years in. And now, being that I'm trained in college in advanced linguistics now I can make my research better. So it probably take me another year or so to gather what my work is already accepted as provisionally to make it better than resubmit for a final submission. So I had to get advanced training to continue my research. It takes years. You don't just defecate self-published data. Scholars work on work, real meticulous, rigorous. When you do the historical linguistic method, you are doing a rigorous work. It's definitely rigorous, man. I just did a grammar sketch of earlier Egyptian in advanced linguistics. I passed my final exam, waiting for my final grade to determine, right? I'm waiting for my final grade. But that type of work is meticulous, man. It is rigorous. It is hard. That's why everyone is not in these fields. So this is someone who has 40 years said this, man, of his work. As a historian, why is this not out there? Why nobody talk about this side of Ivan Sertima's work? So I am also trained as a historian that Black Americans experience not only racism systemically in areas where everyday life, but we experience it in scholarship as well. That is in peer-reviewed data as well. It's even in Egyptology. They had to change certain things in Egyptology because Egyptology was laced in racism. I'm not saying this. This is what this peer-reviewed data is saying. This is amazing, man. So a scholar, now I look at his work differently, definitely now. I mean, you got a archaeologist. I done heard that there's no archaeology. I done heard all type of stuff. You know what I mean? And then when I do historical, that's why I love academic training, because it divides you differently from what's common. I know how to research. So there are various components I use in historical methodology to gather research. This is why I can gather research from various angles that are, related to historical methodology. So this is secondary peer-reviewed data here. And it says a Mexican archaeologist that was on the site said he must confess he's convinced of the soundness of Van Sertima's conclusions. And I had never heard nobody say that. I don't hear people say that, but Kadika, OER, this is what we're here for. We share unbiasedly peer-reviewed data from all angles. It's not just a Eurocentric, ethnocentric perspective of knowledge. No, there are peer-reviewed data everywhere, as you see here. This is the Journal of Caribbean History. And if you look at his qualifications and you type in, and you can plug it in any AI, can he speak on the history of South American and the connections and influence and borrowings and cultural diffusion with other cultures? Yes, a sociologist can. And it's another misconception that only an anthropologist can. No way. Are you crazy? What's the point of other fields if only an anthropologist can look up? That is false. Don't believe that either. I'm a historian. I am actually fully capable because I use qualitative research methods. I gather materials from the primary materials, or if not, the secondary peer-reviewed materials, and then I chronologize it. That's part of that historians are capable of explaining this just as equally as anyone in another field, as well as a sociologist can explain these histories in sources as well. So let's go to 2021. Now, this is 2001, give or take, but is it any serious research on that's near our time period of 2025? Even though this is timely and we respect that. And this is actually the most important because it evaluates the arguments against Sertima, and then it tells you how a archaeologist actually agreed with him, and numerous other people agreed with him. And also, he ain't the only one. There were other scholars who were writing in peer-reviewed data that also argued the same thing. So from that, I agree with Ivan Sertima easily. Peer-reviewed data agrees with him, so I agree with him. So we're going to go into another peer-reviewed data in 2021. Now I wonder what this one says in 2021. Look at this. You see that? This is 2021. And this guy has a master's. This guy, Malat. Malat. He has a master's in sociology. I told you sociologists are serious, man. They are serious. And he has complete skill. You can see it. And this is published in Counterpoints. All right. Counterpoints, volume 349. And this is 2009. Wow, it goes up every year. Oh, you know, we have sociologists, we have scholars in 2001, which is timely. And then we have scholars in 2009, which is timely. And wow. Interesting. So we have a magnificent sociologist in seeing African influence in ancient Central America. Wow. And guess what? Sertima is sourced in this chapter 48 different times. This is peer-reviewed data. So his work is definitely relevant. And not every scholar view him as a pseudoscience. That's ridiculous. Anybody says that is probably like a Islamic or some type of racist or race theorist or something like that. All right. They totally probably ignore the data. Look at this. He's being sourced. I mean, let's read. It's peer-reviewed data, man. Not my fault, man. A lot of people come here, they mad at me, man. I just show the peer-reviewed data. This is a peer-reviewed channel, man. All right. You know, I have to go with the data. I have to be unbiased. I cannot break that mode of academic integrity. It just can't happen. Right? It won't happen, okay? It says, because the dominant Eurocentric story of Columbus traces the knowledge that enabled Europeans to come to the Americas, to the Copernican theory that one could reach India by sailing west from Spain, and to the earlier work of prominent Franciscan schoolmen such as Roger Bacon's geography conducted in the mid to late 13th century, for example, and from these sources to Plato and other early Euro-Greek thinkers, the science and practice of African and Islamic maritime inventors and sailors that diffusively came before them is downplayed or ignored outright. Jeez. I will end it there. I have nothing to say right there. That this is amazing. This is 2000, and this is more than timely here. So this is 8 years from 2001, where the scholar was reviewing the arguments against Ivan van Sertima in peer-reviewed data, and then you will have years after this, and also more peer-reviewed data from a skilled sociologist, PhD in education and curriculum. I mean, and this is a powerful peer-reviewed journal, and it says that the science and practice of African and Islamic maritime inventors and sailors that diffusively came before them is downplayed or ignored. So this is like the third or fourth peer review that states that, and I got this by signing into my college, and then I let my college sign into the data. And it says here that his the African and Islamic sailors are simply ignored. This is the second or third time I see it in peer-reviewed data. The last data said the exact same thing. That was in 2001, and this is 2009. And this is a different ethnicity. A lot of these scholars are actually Native American scholars. If you look up the names here, the person is a Native American scholar. All right. Wow. Sertima was sourced 48 times. That's amazing, man. All right, so his work is still used in research. Wow. So it says here, in the new centuries before the European conquest of the New World, rumors of civilizations to the west across the vast oceans, previously unknown to Europeans, emerged from Africa. I mean, now this ain't Ivan Sertima saying this, man. this ain't Ivan Sertima. This is someone who is doing his own research in peer-reviewed data, and he's sourcing Van Sertima in his own peer-reviewed study. Wow. I don't think pseudo scientists get sourced this many times in up-to-date peer-reviewed research. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, right. It doesn't happen, man. Wow. It says Black Africans in some areas turned out to be an already established presence in social life. The early Spanish colonists, early from a strictly Euro perspective on the mainland of continental South America, made special notes in their journals of sightings of Africans in the New World. He cites Van Sertima, 1976-2003, page 25. Wow. This is peer-reviewed data in 2009. They are still citing him. He's still being cited in academic research. It says they also cite him here. For example, in 1513, Spanish imperial representative Nunez de Balboa and his regiment, starting out northeast of the isthmus between North and South America, made their way south in search of gold. Each new indigenous community they encountered pointed to the wealth-crazed men further south, informing them of another ocean on the other side of the narrow strip of land where they sailed, boats as big as theirs, and endowed with more gold than they could ever weigh. Balboa and his men, driven by their insatiable appetite for gold and wealth, made it across the mountainous and high treacherous land bridge to the other side of the isthmus to the Pacific Ocean, where they stumbled upon a Mayan village, and to their astonishment noticed a group of war captives who were plainly and unmistakably African. So, I mean, do I have to continue? I don't think I'll have to continue any longer. The peer-reviewed data doesn't agree that Ivan Sertima is a pseudoscientist, for one. Two, not all scholars agree with that. Not all archaeologists agree with Ivan Sertima being a pseudoscientist. Not all Mexican archaeologists disagree. We've seen in peer-reviewed data that a Mexican archaeologist who was at the site of the discovery of the Olmec heads actually confessed himself and said, I confess, I am convinced that Ivan Sertima's data is sound. This is peer-reviewed data. Again, this is not me. So if you come here, on disrespectful terms, you already know what I'm going to do. So, this is the peer-reviewed data who's saying this. Okay. And this is a peer-reviewed channel, and it should be respected as such. All right. Now, it also says the possibilities of Africans traveling, is numerous. It's a multidisciplinary approach of evidence. This is 2009. And all the way in 2009, we find pre-Columbian chapters of peer-reviewed data where they are sourcing Van Sertima. I wonder how many people are being sourced in peer-reviewed data who's saying that Ivan Sertima's work is not scientific. How many times they are peer reviewed? Not peer reviewed, but how many times they are cited? So this is 1997. Now you see on the left here, again, on the left, they were not here before Columbus, Afrocentric hyperdiffusion. Do y'all know there's a response to this? See, this was what we are not getting. We are not getting the responses to these papers. So this 1997, you see this 1997 paper, and this was addressed in a paper I originally showed y'all. All right, so this was already addressed. A scholar addressed this already, okay? I don't want people saying, oh, look at that right here. He is ignoring that. No, we talked about that. You remember we talked about robbing Native American cultures? See, that was published in if you look on the left, I'm highlighted. This was published in 1997. I just showed y'all a peer-reviewed journal that disagreed with this. So my thing is not the disagreement. You can disagree. And I even disagree on some things. But to say, because you see it in this specific journal and discount all the other journals that exist all over the planet is nonsensical, man. It doesn't, you will be rejected. You will be rejected, man. It just, I will reject you. You will be rejected scientifically. There's no way we can that's subjective. So what about the other peer review data? Why you're not considering other peer review data? I'm confused. Why people only consider this peer review data when there was, you see this robbing, let's go to robbing Native American cultures. You see this? This was have a response. You see that? Here's the forum that all these scholars are talking about. On peer review data, we show all peer reviews. So I'm showing people the peer reviews that goes against Ivan Sertima's, and they label it as Afrocentricity. All right, you see that on robbing Native American culture. Man, they did him disservice. They did some crazy stuff to this man. Now let's look at the peer review who goes against this. You see this? So it's a peer review right here. Okay, this is a peer review. Now, this is in 97. This is against Ivan Sertima. Now, here's another peer review that challenged that. All right. It's not always one side. You always have to, for Kadika members and those who, like our OER here, for those who like research, you don't just depend on one. It's always another scholar. It's always, a scholar that rebuttals another scholar. This is not the Quran where God said this and that's that, which I'm not sending shots at the Quran, but this is secular. This ain't religion. Respect to religion though, but this is secular. This is a whole nother field. Just because one person said don't mean it's so. You will have controversy on a field in which we already discovered, right? Now it says on robbing Native American cultures. Now remember, I already showed this. You see that? So when was this? This was published in 1998. You see? So y'all have 1997, and a year later, another scholar published in the same current anthropology how they are being biased for even saying that robbing Native American. What happened to just having a different viewpoint? Why we gotta rob you? Because he's not saying that black people are actually indigenous of Mesoamerica. That's not what he's saying. In his thesis doesn't say that. We read his thesis clearly. His thesis doesn't say that. All right. So these are excellent peer-reviewed papers for those who want an unbiased view, for those who disagree with him, but yet they want to see ones that agree, and for people who agree and want to see those who disagree. So I think we should be neutral. All right, because again, we see scholarship that's in 2009, and then I can show y'all scholarship in early. I'm gonna just y'all know I preserve ammunition just in case someone wants to play. All right, I preserve ammunition. So I have a 2021 paper, but I'm not sharing that. I'm only sharing the timely 2009. Let's share the timely 2009 where let's go here. And this is a sociologist who was more than here we go. Y'all see this? All right. So yes, Africans, there is evidence for, according to secondary peer-reviewed data, there is evidence that Africans traveled to America pre-Columbian, before Europeans. Come on. It's all in peer-reviewed data as we see here. Sorry about that. Let me. So there are African influence in ancient Central America. And this is my evidence. My evidence only deals with peer-reviewed data, secondary sources as a historian supposed to, as I will show you our method again. So this aligns with our methods. So as you see our methods here, historical research is used. What type of components I am using here? So it's kind of hard for me to find primary sources at the time of the event, other than the time of the research of Ivan Sertima. But I can look into secondary sources created later, and that's what I have done. And this is part of historical methodology, which in secondary sources, just for academic integrity, my sources, even if they are untimely, they are peer reviewed. And then I only show one untimely peer review when y'all go back. But I from there, the rest from 2001 on up is timely. So here at Kadigo, we definitely agree. If the peer review data says it, I mean, I'm not going to just say, oh, no, it's, you know what I mean? I'm going to go with the peer review data. They are African influence in ancient Central America. You accept it or not. You come here playing, you will be deleted. You will be blocked quickly. You have to take this up on the authors. You know, you have to write. This is open access, so you can write your dissertation, your thesis, your paper, or however you want to go against these scholars who are saying that there are African influence in ancient Central America, meaning that these Africans have traveled, and it's a possibility that they traveled before Europeans have documented their travel. So I didn't say that, you know, I'm not the hard, don't bring me evil or nothing like that. I'm just Kadika Oya, just sharing peer review data. All right. I'll give y'all 5 minutes for any questions. Elder asked the question here. What's the title? I showed four peer review papers. If you check the description, I put all 4 of the peer review data in the description. And here are one of them, as you see. This is chapter 2. This is peer review. This is a peer review chapter. This is a scholar who presented his work and submitted his work in a peer review data into a peer review journal in 2009. So they are still using his work. All right. Indeed. Definitely. It unifies humanity. And it unifies humanity because nobody is considered special. everyone is on equal terms. Everyone can be influenced or borrowed from any culture, even if the culture is stronger. Let's say stronger militarily or politically, etc. All right. So yeah, I agree with that as well. All right. So this is the end. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'm out. Shop, shop.